Although I have spoken about urban developments in the political geography section of this class, we are really focusing on urban developments and urbanization in this section of the class. So we're going to go through a little bit more about the growth of urban settlements, the growth of cities, why they grow, in other words. One of the reasons could be that the place is an important religious center. For example, Varanasi in India, it has several million people that live in it today, but originally it was an important site, one of the most important sites for Hinduism. And as a result of that, people were drawn into the city because of the religion. Now, at this point in history, the people who live in and around Varanasi, although many of them may very well be there for the religious aspects of the city, at the same time, the economy has become much more multifaceted. Could be that it's a transportation hub, like Chicago, one of the most important transportation hubs in the history of the United States. You can see on the left-hand side the stockyards. Those are feedlots where both cattle and pigs were kept. They were fattened up and then they were slaughtered. And then once they were slaughtered, they were put on rail lines, especially in refrigerated cars, and transported all over the United States. As a result of that, Chicago became an important transportation hub. The confluence of transportation corridors, like, for example, St. Louis, Missouri, which is at the confluence of the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. In fact, it's very close to where the Ohio River enters into the Mississippi River. And so what you have is the gateway to the west, which is that arch that you see there in St. Louis, and you have the ability to have both north-south and east-west transportation there. Manufacturing centers, like, for example, Buffalo, New York, was one of the most important grain, steel, and then transportation mills. That means like making rail lines and train cars and automobiles and trucks and all of that, was centered to some extent in places like Buffalo, New York. You can see General Mills on the left-hand side. In fact, you probably don't know this, but in 1900, Buffalo, New York had more millionaires in it than any other city in the United States, and it was because of the mills and the transportation. Or political centers, like, for example, Washington, D.C. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of money where the government is centered, and that's going to draw people to the cities. Or a combination of these things, which is usually the way it works. The primacy of an urban center in a region draws population, in other words, in-migration to the city. And the cities grow because of both birth and pull factors. And actually, in the United States, it is overwhelmingly through pull factors that the cities have grown through time. It doesn't mean that that's what's happening in every city now, but it does mean through time they've grown through pull factors. In other words, people migrating into the cities. And those pull factors are tied to jobs, education, and opportunities. In other words, economic pull factors. Remember Walter Christaller and central place theory? Not all services, or anything else for that matter, will be located in smaller settlements. So if you need a variety of services, or you desire a variety of services, the larger the city, the more likely you're going to be able to encounter those services. And cities also provide variety and diversity of jobs, people, entertainment, services, transportation, and all of the rest. If you live in a small city and you want to fly across the world, you're probably going to have to go to a large city to get on that plane to be able to do that, right? If you live in a small city, there might be one theater there, and that one theater only shows a small selection of movies. Whereas if you live in a large city, you have a greater selection of movies. Netflix being discounted.